tomorrow if you want.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, should we start then?
Yes, let's begin and just tell us a little bit about
Well,
yourself.
number one, I celebrate the fact that to have this opportunity to, to talk about our country, and you asked me to give you some thoughts about my life, throughout the whole experience. First of all, I would like to talk to Guatemala about Guatemala. Guatemala is one of the 5 Central American countries. Size area-wise, it's about the size of 2/3 of the state of Florida. I mean, about 2/3 of the surface of Florida is the same surface of Guatemala. Guatemala has different levels because the location has many volcanoes and many levels. Guatemala City is a mile high, and you go 100 kilometers to the south, you get to the Pacific Ocean. 200 plus kilometers to the north, you get to the Atlantic Ocean. So in Guatemala City, the weather is all year between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So people living in the nicest home don't need to put air conditioning or heater. If it's hot, just open the windows. If it's cold, just close the windows. That's all it takes. And I'm talking about the nicer homes. Even the presidential house don't have air conditioning. Okay, and so that is why Guatemala, they call them the country of eternal spring. But if you go to the oceans, it's hot all the time. You need conditioner all the time. Okay. The population of the country in the last count that they did last year is 18.8 million. The capital city is 3 million people live there. Now the population in Guatemala is 43% is pure Indians, okay? It's Mayans and so forth, 43%. 56% is a mixture of the Spanish, particularly foreign blood, but mostly Spanish blood with the Indian, and they call Latinos. So that's just a mix. Sometimes the Latinos don't like to be called Indian, although we have Indian blood. I am one of them, okay? But that's how it is. As far as the life of the population, the 56% of the indigenous people are very poor. Okay, by poor I mean that you don't have appropriate nutrition, housing, or stock to cover yourself up enough. So 56% of the people in general, but 75% of the Indian people have that, are very poor. In the other hand, the people who are the mixture, only 36% are very poor. Okay, so that is something that is reflected in the life of the country. And you asked a little bit to how come that I came to the United States. Well, I was initially raised as a farmer. My father had a farm, he had about 400 cows, and we had to deal with that. So I was a son of a farmer, okay? And but he died when he was 52 years old. I was only 12 years old then. And after that, the economy came down, and there were several family reasons why most of the cows were lost. And that's a very sad situation when you, after having more than you need, you have no, basically nothing. Most of the cows were robbed by people who were around. So then my mother decided to sell the farm, and you got to go to study. I went to study. I ended up being a graduate, an MD graduate in Guatemala, in the University of San Carlos in Guatemala. And subsequently, I migrate to the United States, end up training myself as a surgeon, as a general and vascular surgeon at the University of Iowa. I spent there 35 years in the state of Iowa. But still, all this time, when my soul was my country. It, I knew exactly how people who don't have much live in Guatemala. And I from the area that I came, to see a doctor, you have to go about 100 miles away. So most of the people did not see a doctor. They see somebody who was told of new medicine. The deliveries were all the friend, one of the friend ladies would deliver your baby. I was one of them. And so that stuck in my mind. And I retired 3 years before I should have retired, because I wanted to do something for the people in El Melonar. Was not even a town, or just a farm there, but then the little town was called Jalpatagua, and there was a priest at a church, and we talked with each other a lot. We planned on it, and we got help from the government, and I got a group of friends that I have there by then, and we built a 62-bed hospital in that little town. Now the ladies would come and have delivered the babies in the hospital. We do the gallbladders, even some of the vascular operations in that country. I trained some of the physicians who were working with us there. And then Guatemala has 22 provinces. It's like mini states, okay? And the social security system had one hospital in one of those 22 provinces. And the central hospital was in the capital city. But they did not, and these 4 million people that we talk, 18 million people we're talking about, did not have a vascular surgeon that could protect the blood vessels. So the incidence of losing your legs or your arm, or having a stroke because the arteries to the brain were occluded, was very, very common. So I spent then, I left the doctors that I have trained in the little town, working there, and I spent 3 years training the already trained surgeons, but who did not have any training in vascular surgery. Spending 3 years full time training these doctors in the capital city. And at the end of those 3 years, we have dropped the amputation rate of the lower extremities by 50%. And that was one of my major satisfactions that I had as far as and that program is still going. But the training was not just how to survive the legs, also how not to get a stroke, like operating the vessels that go to the brain and so forth. So that makes us extremely honored to be able to do that. I still get, even with living here, get from the physicians that I train, get a call, not every day, but every week. With complicated cases, what do we do? And so when was in Guatemala, there is a saying that you never any good in your own country, but one of these days they called me, and that was 3 years ago. He says, up to now, this is the Society of General Surgery in Guatemala. Well, every year the surgeons, not just vascular, surgeons in the surgical society give an honor to the people who have taught us things, okay? But usually if people are dead, when we celebrate, we honor them. You're the first one alive. So they did that to me. And I thought so that the fact that the vascular, the surgical society of the state of Iowa named me in 1995 their chief for the year. So, any questions?
Yes, I do have some questions. Just briefly, I know that you studied at the University of Iowa. How did you end up in Mason City?
Well, good question. When I was finishing up, my training, my illusion was to go to Guatemala and practice there. And so I went to Guatemala. No, first of all, before that, I have written to the immigration office in Omaha a visa to stay in this country the time that I wanted to, whenever I went to come and operate in the United States. They did not answer the call. So I got to Guatemala, and then I said to the chief of military hospital where I had left. When I left, I was working there. And I said, sir, I am well trained in vascular surgery, and I would like you to pay me the same $125 a month. So I can feed my wife and the children. And he says, there's no place for you here. But they didn't want that because otherwise they would have feel, that they were on the train and they didn't want to run a competition. In Iowa, there were 3 groups who have approached me before I did that. They wanted me to join them. So now I'm coming with tears in my eyes and chose the group that was associated with the university. I said, did you say that you want me to come and interview with you guys? Absolutely, he says. And this is on Thursday. We'll do it Saturday. So on Saturday, I was there, my wife was there, and they were beautiful group. They have all kinds of surgeons there. Beautiful people, I mean, really professional people. And then Martha started, when we were around the table, and she was trying to serve me my food. And the lady says, Martha, that is nothing that we want to bring here, okay? Otherwise, these guys are going to want us to feed him too. So don't do that. At the end, the chief of that group says, tell me what do we have to do to get you here? What the difference? Well, I said, to start with, a year ago, I wrote a letter to Omaha, to the immigration office, for a permanent visa. But they didn't even answer me. If you had the visa, would you come with us? Well, I would think about it. And I said, now I'm, because I got the other 2 groups. Well, a week later, I get a letter from Omaha we are very sorry that we misplaced your letter last year. But now you have permission to stay in the United States and operate. You have license to operate until you get your permanent visa. And a week later, I had the note on the permanent visa. So for me, it was very easy to get the permanent visa. And at the university, I was very, very lucky. As I said, when I cry when they call me and they want to name me the chief of the vascular society in the whole state. Yeah, that's the full picture of that. I'm saying is what I said. Yeah, and so that is basically, and again, we are very blessed because two of the three kids that we have, they are physicians. One is a brain surgeon, and the other one is a plastic surgeon, and my daughter who's an attorney. Yeah. Well,
And I think people here in Mason City remember your kids, Renee, Suzette, and Pablito, little Pablo. I don't know we're supposed to call him that anymore, but
Pablo is spoiled.
Pablo, I had a question about Guatemala. I guess I was wondering, you talked about the poverty, the severe poverty. And I guess I was wondering, what occupations do the people do there? And also, because of the poverty, there must be quite a bit of malnutrition, or I wondered about the type of diseases that are prevalent with the people there, with the poverty.
I have it here, the malnutrition in the indigenous people is 58%. And in the non-indigenous people is 38%. See, the Indians were discriminated until relatively recent, and still they are. So, and the worst part of it is that the worst discriminators were the mestizos, the ones who have Indian blood too, but have a Spanish last name, and so that is something that it has improved some, but still is a problem. Yeah, them don't.
You mentioned that when you were growing up, you were raised as a farmer, and I think that's a pretty common, or was a pretty common occupation there. When you mentioned reducing the amputation rate, so much of the labor there is still done manually. Is that correct? That's why that rate is so important, reducing amputations.
Yeah, and but again, the vascular society is the vascular society now, and the general hospitals have vascular surgeons, which they didn't do before. So that make a difference, and but it's still a problem. And unfortunately, the poorest people are the ones who, especially women. She doesn't want to leave the kids, and many times has been cases, a woman who had 6 children and she died when the third, the 7th one, but she couldn't go to hospital to deliver. Yeah. But there's a lot of things to do yet. That's why I spent 17 years after my retirement in Guatemala trying to do something for my people. And incidentally, those 3 years that when I was teaching those guys how to operate blood vessels, it was no money, zero. Okay, that's why we have saved when I was working in Iowa. We saved enough that we could, survive that. Yeah. And the kids, when the kids were growing up, as we say in this house, the only thing that we're going to speak is Spanish inside, okay? We want to speak English is outside. Mm-hmm. Well, everything was okay like that until, the 2 older ones, remember that one was 12 years older and the other one was 10 years older than the little one. Mm-hmm. Well, they started speaking English inside. I grabbed my daughter with her arm open the door, out. I speak only English, you want outside. That is cold. Yeah, I know it's cold, but they stay there for a little bit, okay? And that forced them to speak Spanish well. So much that when we went to college, they took Spanish as a class. That was an easy way, but they were assisting the teacher. And so
Why was that important? Why was that so important?
because I saw that it's a, 21 countries outside the United States, so they speak. And I thought one of the features. Now that daughter that I told you, she's an attorney. She speaks 4 languages, speaks Italian and French too. And she's now in charge of Pepsi Cola business in all Latin America because they're Spanish.
Education is so important, obviously. And what's the future like for young people in Guatemala today, as far as education is concerned? Do you know?
There are good places to educate. There
Okay.
are good places to if you can afford. There are some institutions that can, but it is the since we had Juan Jose Arevalo, which was one of the presidents of Guatemala from 1914 to 1950, he really built a lot of schools and he made a lot of advances in the education in Guatemala. But still, it's especially in the farm areas, a lot of people who,
Or 2 different races, but there's still racism in Guatemala that exists
less,
today.
less,
Yeah.
because before you in the banks or in the schools, you did not see Indians, employees, or even in the restaurants, you did not see Indians. Now you see a lot of Indians, and but still there is discrimination, definitely.
One other thing that you mentioned was what spurred you to really to build that hospital was the fact that people were dying of things that are just so.
I saw people dying. Now I know what can be done about things, okay?
Yeah.
When as I was studying medicine, I said, "Oh, this guy couldn't go on," and it was an illusion that from the very beginning was I had in mind to do it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I could do it, we just left and do it and did it. Yeah.
Yeah. And just
They offered me twice the Minister of Health in Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
I say thank you very much. No, you know why?
Why?
Because knowing how the authorities in Guatemala steal money from people, they say, because we built a home in Guatemala, then we have to say, well, that's where he stole the money from the minister.
Oh.
And they want to get into it, No.
Yeah. We spoke with a nun who is working in Honduras, and she talked about just how the system is just laden with corruption. It's just a way of life, corruption. Is that the same in Guatemala?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But every candidate that goes in is promising, oh, I'm going to do it right until they get there.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably not as bad as in Honduras, but still.
Yeah. It's a remarkable thing to have built a hospital. But I don't think people understand just how difficult that was, considering all of the difficulties, just the corruption just in and of itself, and how difficult it is to get anything done in a third world country, or in a poor country, a country that's stricken by poverty. And how did you see that through? Just that takes a lot of hope, a lot of.
Well, because see, I've been, we have all these people who work for us,
Mhm.
and I knew how hard life was for them,
Yeah.
and because we had a bunch of cows. We're not, after 5 died, yes, we had episodes was economically difficult, but not before.
Mhm.
No. But being poor after having things more than you need is worse than if you were born poor and stay poor.
Yes.
And
So,
if anything, you would feel like it's appropriate to do, to share some thoughts with, talk on anything, I'd be happy to. Okay?
okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you
And
so
I
much.
admire you for doing that kind of things for people. Yeah.
Well, it's some kind of harebrained idea that I had, and here we are.
That's great.
But it's important. I want people to be able to have an understanding that, you know, uh, the poor countries are not that far away. We have a connection to, we're closer connected than we ever thought we would be. And
Mhm.
I want people to be, to remember that, and to remember that, like just the humanity of it. It's easy for people to read stories and just have it be a story. It's easy for people to look at statistics and say, oh, 58% of indigenous people suffer from malnutrition. That's just a statistic. But when it has a face, when then it becomes more
Or
than
your
just
kids,
a
or your
number.
kids have, or your kids have to face.
That's
That's
right.
worse yet. That's
That's
worse
right.
yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to do this, is because I want it to not just people just to pass by it. I want them to do something, to be
And
moved.
just look at it, it's normal,
What's
It's
that?
normal. So, or look at it just, it's normal,
Yeah,
that some people don't have much to do because they don't like to work or something.
exactly.
Mhm.
Or well, it'll never be fixed. Oh, that's just the way it is. No, I don't want it to be like that. I
Mhm.
want to see the world be different.
And places like, people like you should make a difference in the world. Unless you are, no, there always have been good people in humanity,
Yeah.
but there are plenty of them who could be better. Yeah.
Amen.
Mhm.
Amen. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I have enjoyed visiting with you.
No, I'm enjoying it. Audrey, it's so nice to talk to you. Okay,
Nice to see you. Hello to Martha.
Okay. I will.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.